Hi guys, so I've been trying to learn some CSS animations and I created a fading box. So I wanted to do a video showing how to do that. And before we go into the coding of that, I just want to go over some of the functions that we're going to be using. The first one I want to cover is margin. So we use a margin to set the width of the element to prevent it from stretching out to the edges of its container. The element will then take up the specified width and the remaining space will be split equally between the two margins. Using auto will horizontally center the element within its container. So for font size, we have M and rem. Those are two things that we can use. You can also use pixels and I believe percentages, but in this one I'm using a rem. The default font size in HTML is 16 pixels. So a rem is relative to the default or the root font size. M is relative to the font size of its direct or nearest parent. So 2M means 2 times the size of the current font. So if you set a font, you're not using your default, M is going to be relative to that font that you set. Some display types I'm going to use. Display flex expands items to fill available free space or shrinks them to prevent overflow. Justify content, it's going to center horizontally. Align items, center, we're going to center vertically. I'm also going to change some of the properties. So we use transition that changes the properties. The transition duration specifies how many seconds or milliseconds a transition effect takes to complete. So example, you would use 3S for 3 seconds. Transition timing function specifies the speed curve of the transition effect. The default of that is ease, so you don't have to code that. And an ease will do a slow start, then it will speed up, and then it will end slowly. And some miscellaneous items, I'm going to use opacity. That sets the transparency level for an element. An example, a 0.5 is 50%, so your image will be transparent by 50%. Hover, used to select elements when you mouse over them. And border radius, we're going to use that to round the corners of the element's outer border edge. And that's going to be based on a percentage we set. And these are just the sources that I used to get this information to learn how to do this. I'm going to have all of these links in the description box. Okay, so for this, I'm using CodePen, and I'm going to just create a little box here. So I'm going to have a div. I'm going to give it a class name of, let's see, fade. And it's going to say fade, and I'm going to close my div. That's all I'm going to do for the HTML. So I'm going to move this up a bit so we'll have some space. And I'm not going to use JavaScript at all. So right now we have a very tiny fade in the corner. Okay. So for my div, I'm going to add a width and make it 500 pixels. And my height, also 500 pixels. So I'm just making a big box here. And we're going to save that. And so we can see it, I'm going to give it a background color. $6764.70. Okay, so now we can see our box 500 by 500. Okay, so we're going to go with the margin and make it auto. Okay, and now our box is horizontally centered. Okay, I'm going to create a flex box. Justify, content, center. So that is going to center horizontally. And then align items center. It should center vertically. So we have our tiny fade right here. Okay, and this background color, let's see. Maybe I want to alter that a little bit. I'm using HTML color codes to get my colors. And I think I actually want to go with this one. There we go. I want that color there. So my font size is a little bit small. It's the 16 pixels. I want to make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to do 5 rem. And remember, rem is relative to the default font. So it's relative to that 16 pixels. Okay, so this is our initial box that we've created here. Okay, so now what I want to do is have it fade. Get it more translucent. Okay, so we have the fade class up here. So I'm going to do a dot fade, and I'm going to do a hover because I want it to fade only when I hover over it. So that's when we use opacity. And I'm going to use 0.5. And it should lighten up. Okay. But it's kind of jumping into the fade. So I'm going to add the transition duration. 1 second. And it should be a bit more smooth. There we are. So it smoothly fades. It doesn't just jump into the fade. And another thing I want to do is change it so that it doesn't have these hard edges, these corners here. So when you hover over it, I want it to kind of become more round. So we're going to use the border radius and make it 10%. There. And in 1 second, it curves a bit and it fades. So that's a very simple demonstration of how we can use transition duration, how we can use opacity, border radius, and hover. So give this a try, add different things to it. Check the links below to see all of the different ways that you can do this, and I hope this video was helpful. Thanks, bye!